Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Express. Well, this is a new week and a new episode on what is becoming everyone's favorite talk show. You'll agree with me that it is encouraging, exciting, profound, real, energizing, sensible, and sensitive. This is what Express is all about and much more. So, without any further delay, please help me welcome back to the stage the beautiful, expressive, talented, and savvy director of Express. She's called Carolyn. Carolyn, take it away.
Welcome to Express, and I'm your host, Carolyn. For those who have been here for a while, this is now like the 12th episode, welcome again. Continue to subscribe. And for those who are visiting for the first time, just hit that button, subscribe, so you will be inundated for the most recent content. Today, our guest is Carmen Hope Thomas. She is best known as a singer, songwriter, and producer. Her career has crossed from radio to TV. As a voice-over artist and marketing executive, Carmen has over 25 years of experience in radio, working with some of the biggest names in urban radio like DK Khaled, Rick Party, and others. After Carmen had a brain tumor in 2015, Carmen found herself in an upward battle to heal and getting information about why this tumor happened to her. Her research and journey led her to create her own hair and skincare brand called Zipporah. She started out in Jamaica and it's all over the world. So she will go in details when she come in studio, and you just have to listen. Let me tell you, sit back and listen to her story. Welcome, Carmen Hope Thomas. Welcome to the show. What a busy lady. I'm so privileged to have you here. Believe me.
Thank you so much.
I've been trying to get in touch with you, keep up with you, but you've been so busy. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. It's a blessing to have you. So without further ado, let's go on. All right. So, Carmen, and I should let my audience know, I've never really met you. Have I?
No. We've crossed in the same circles, but we've never actually met.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So you were born in United States, yes?
That is correct. I was born in Florida, a city called Ocala, many years ago.
Okay. We're keeping at that.
Yes.
Okay. So you are an only child or one of?
No, I have two sisters. Older than me. I'm the youngest, and one is a teacher, and the other one is a general contractor. She builds houses and churches and commercial buildings. She's a big deal. Like, we're very proud of her.
Yeah. That's good. So you so tell me a little about your family.
Well, I grew up in a small town, Adventist family, very we were, I would say, we were very strong in the faith. I have an uncle who was a conference president. I have an aunt who gave over 40 years of service to the church in the general conference office. I have countless family members who've worked in the church, for the church in some capacity. And so we were strong in the faith. Like we were drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah. Okay. Constantly advocates for Adventism and the work. And so I believe that my sisters and I share the same thought, in that, there's a strong obligation to continue to share the faith and to allow people to experience Adventism through us, and to allow the world to see a true good example of who we are. Now, are we perfect? Absolutely not. We've had so many tragedies to happen in our family, and I think it's caused us all to to live it out in different ways. But for the most part, we're a strong knit family, and we love each other, and we are religious about our family reunions and spending time together. A true Southern family with strong roots for tradition. Yeah.
Okay. And keeping on the family. So dad is still alive?
My dad is alive. My mother died in 2008, which was tough for us because she died 2 weeks before my first son was born. Oh. So she never met my children. And so that's something that really pulls at me when I think about it. But for the most part, because we have a hope.
Yes.
I try not to internalize it as a negative. I just know that God knew that her time had come, and that there will be a time that we can reconcile in the earth made new.
Okay, good. And school, tell us a little bit about school and college.
Well, I always, my high school, grade school experience has always been public school. I never went to an Adventist school until I went to Oakwood University. Okay. I graduated in 94, and I met my husband there, and all my best friends are still my best friends. I just got off the phone with my roommate from college that we stay together. I mean, that's my girl. That's my sister friend, and she will always be that.
Okay. And you mentioned that you met your husband, who is Jason, right?
Jason Thomas. Yeah, a lot of people know him as a finance guru. And so we met at Oakwood. We never dated at Oakwood, but we met there. We didn't date until 10 years after we graduated. So it was a while. Yeah.
Okay. And so you got married 10 years after. But what were you doing?
No, we dated, and I think 6 years after dating or meeting up that we got married. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So before you got married, what were you doing then? Like career?
I had a full career in radio and television. I worked for Fox Kids Network, which later turned into Nickelodeon. I worked for a host of radio networks. Martin Communications was my first. And then I went to Evergreen Media. And then from Evergreen Media, Sunshine Media Broadcast Company. And then I worked for Cox Media, which is the fourth largest media company, radio media company in the United States. So that was my last station before quitting altogether.
So you were self-sufficient, I would say, a businesswoman, yeah?
Absolutely. I did a lot of things, but I could say that in my years of radio and television, I was able to, build a home. I had rental property. I traveled solo. And then eventually, like I said, I got with my husband.
Okay.
And we were able to build a life together. And at that time, I was in my late 30s, and family was the only thing on my mind.
Okay. So we get to the point now where you feel now you need to settle down and have a family. Tell me more about that.
Well,
was it a journey?
Yeah. Oh gosh. My journey in that has been amazing.
Tell us about
it's had so many ups and downs. When we first got engaged, we did what everyone recommended. You go to the doctor, you check yourself, you make sure everything is working. You're about to get married. And I found out 2 weeks before I got married that my doctor was strongly recommending that I get a hysterectomy. He said that you likely will never have children. And his words, which were so mean to me at the time and still mean, I think that he showed no sensitivity. He told me that my uterus was like a sack of rocks and that it definitely would not hold a baby to term. And so I was, my spirit was a little broken, but I kind of knew who I served. And I was like, well, really? Okay. And
so how did Jason take that?
Jason was very upset. He was so upset because he was with me at the doctor. And he got out to the car. And before we drove off, I remember him stopping the car and pulling back into the parking spot, got out of the car, told me to get out of the car. We went inside and we got my records. And I said, why are we doing this? He says, because you're not coming back to this guy ever again. And he called a family friend who was Dr. Hugh Bailey, a Jamaican OBGYN, who is very highly sought after. He lives in Huntsville, Alabama. And well, he called two doctors. One was in Texas and he didn't get him right away. And then he called Dr. Bailey, who answered his cell phone. And he explained the situation. And Dr. Bailey said, send me her records and we'll get started on a treatment plan.
So this was about what, 2002 years after you got married? Or
No, we hadn't gotten married yet.
Okay.
We got married. This was probably October-ish. We got married in December, and by March, I was in his office being examined, and I had surgery before March was over. And Dr. Bailey is a very meticulous OBGYN who has, I wouldn't say patented, but he's done so much work in the area. He understands the female body. He understands Black women. And he did a masterful job of removing 17 fibroid tumors from my uterus.
Wow.
Masterful job. I mean, he took his time. He meticulously pulled out everything from a grapefruit size to a grape size. I mean, he just, if he could feel it, he took it out, and he did that. And from there, I was pregnant within 6 or 7 months, and I had that's when I was pregnant with my first son.
Yes. So after you got married and you got pregnant with him.
Right.
All right. So then tell me what else that you need to, so how did you go to full term?
No, July was early because my mom died 2 weeks before I actually had him. He was due in November and my mom died October 14th. So I had him October 30th.
Maybe because of...
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely because of it. I never even made it to her funeral. I couldn't get there. I had so many challenges just keeping the baby inside. Dr. Bailey insisted that it was just too soon. He needed he said, let's try to get at least 2 weeks, at least 2 more weeks. And I just didn't see myself making it. I was on medication. I was on bed rest. And eventually I made it to the 2-week mark. And my son was born. He stayed in the hospital for about a week, but eventually came home, and he was premature, but you can never tell it now. He's almost 6 feet tall and he's 14. So it's like, it's crazy.
All right. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to ask you a little bit just for someone out there who might be listening. So you mentioned that mom, she passed away in October, and then you had your baby the 30th or the 31st?
The 30th.
30th, sorry. That's 2 weeks after.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
How did you cope with that? Because that's like your mom dying and then the baby being born before its actual date.
And then we couldn't come home with him.
Oh, so that's what I'm saying. How did you cope during that time?
I don't even know. A lot of people, tried to lift me. They tried to talk about it, tried to make me feel as though I was lucky or blessed. I didn't feel that way. And I just kind of wanted to grieve and let people let me grieve. It's as if nobody wanted me to grieve it out. And I wanted to do it, but I never had the opportunity to do it. And postpartum depression is real. I tell people all the time, that thing is real. And then when you add on to it the death of a beloved one, that doesn't help it at all. And I know it affected my parenting in the beginning because, I mean, I wouldn't let people hold my son. I held him for comfort, which is, it could be a good thing. I don't know. But I held him for comfort. I held him for reassurance. I held him for healing.
Yes.
And so that was my coping mechanism. And to this day, he and I are super close. Not that I'm not close with the little one, but we have our own kind of relationship.
Sons and mothers tend to be a little bit closer than, girls and dads.
Yeah.
That's what I found out. Yeah. All right. So you would suggest to anyone listening that if someone is grieving, just be there, not to say much, or
especially with my situations like mine or similar to mine, just leave them alone. Let them grieve it out, because it's hard to articulate. We have a hope, but at the same time, it was tough to even rehearse the hope in my head. I couldn't remember the verse. I didn't know it. I just needed space to just talk it through with God and be okay with it.
All right. Okay. So baby was in hospital. Baby was discharged. How
we immediately went to Florida, which is where we lived, and then my husband was working in Panama, running a hedge fund, and we moved to Panama. But I didn't stay long. I think I was there for 2 weeks. I couldn't do it. I needed to go back to the U.S. and he worked there, and I stayed in the United States until he came home from that assignment.
Okay.
From there, we lived there until 2010. I think my son was 2, going on 3, when we decided to go to Huntsville, Alabama for Christmas. So we drove from Miami to Huntsville. And my mother-in-law, who lives there, her birthday's on the 22nd of December. And she always complained that Christmas always overshadowed her birthday.
Yeah, people tell
you
that's when they're born in December, right?
Yes. And so I had decided at that time, I said, honey, let's have your mother a party. So we were at the house, my son and I were there with her, and my husband had gone to the store to get some things, and we were preparing for the party, kind of wanting it to be a surprise. When I noticed that she was acting very strange, she was just very barking at people in anger and just not satisfied with how the house was. And she had some workmen there. She was unsatisfied with their work and just barking at people. And I was talking to my sister on the phone. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with my mother-in-law, but she is in a bad mood. And, I'm just talking to my sister on the phone. And I looked over at my mother-in-law, and I noticed she was dragging her foot. I was like, she's dragging her foot. And I called her over, and I said, what is wrong with you? And she's like, what? I said, you're dragging your foot. She's like, no, I'm not. She's barking at me. And I was like, yes, you are. You're dragging your foot. And then as I'm looking at her and as I'm saying it, my sister and it was as if I was thinking it right when she said it. She said, she's having a stroke. Get off the phone with me and call 911. And I got off the phone. I called 911. They were there in minutes. And sure enough, my mother-in-law was having a stroke. And from that episode, we ended up staying in Huntsville way longer than we had anticipated, because we needed to help her. We needed to help my father-in-law. I think my father-in-law just in some way was in a daze over the whole thing, because it happened so suddenly, and they weren't old. At all. She has a history of cholesterol in her family, so she's always really watched what she ate, and she knew that eggs and cheese and those things were going to spike her cholesterol, so she made sure she stayed away from him. And I think a little of it was that my father-in-law was like, you've done all of this and you still had a stroke anyway. And so that was always a challenge. We hung around to help and to try to assist them. And before long, I just told Jason, let's just rent a house because this isn't working for me. I can't stay there with them. Let's be nearby.
Mm.
And so we rented a house, even though we had our house in Miami.
Florida.
And eventually we moved to Huntsville and we remained there.
Wow. So your mom died premature, delivery, preterm rather. And then now your mom-in-law had a stroke.
Yeah.
And then
So all of these things
were happening.
All of these things were happening. And
okay.
we stayed in Huntsville and helped assist them to get past that. She's fine now. You never know what happened.
That's good.
Yeah. And
at least you sacrificed that time and stayed. So tell me more about you have two children, right?
2 boys, and
boys.
they are all boy, 100%. There's nothing else in there but boy.
I keep telling you need to go for the girl.
Not at my age. I'm good.
Okay.
It's funny. I had my youngest at 42, so I'm good. I there's no more room left in my heart.
So you had your 2 boys, but what transpired? I know you're into the hair industry, if we call it that.
That is correct. After I had my youngest son, in 2015, I had him in 2013. In 2015, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And that whole episode of my life upended everything I knew about everything. I really struggled to wrap my brain around why it happened to me. I felt I was a healthy person. I had a lot of hair, which I, of course, eventually lost. But the journey of that was tough. My kids did not understand what was happening. I lost my eyesight. 48 hours of blindness was really tough to navigate for me. Not being able to get good healthcare in Huntsville to deal with it. When we got to the hospital after I had gotten blind and had a headache for 2 days and just couldn't function, they didn't know right away that it was a brain tumor. They couldn't figure that out at the time. And, running tests and just trying to figure out what is this? Why does this woman have such a bad headache as she's blind? What happened? Well, eventually after a spinal tap and a CAT scan and an MRI, they recognized that I had a tumor that was bleeding out on my brain. And Huntsville really did not have a hospital that was equipped with dealing with that kind of thing, which was surprising to us because they have a very great hospital system. And they wanted to send me to Vanderbilt. And my husband insisted that they try finding another hospital because Vanderbilt did not have the capacity to take me until 48 hours passed. They didn't have a doctor on call that would be able to do the surgery until 48 hours passed. So because of those 48 hours, my husband insisted that the doctors try another hospital. And at the time, Atlanta or Birmingham was the only other options, which were so far away. It would have been, Birmingham, I should say, wasn't far away, but Atlanta was far away, and it would have probably cost my life to try to make that trip because this surgery needed to happen immediately. Well, long story short, my husband insisted that they call Birmingham, and they were able to find, this is the craziest thing. So they're calling around, 48 hours in Birmingham, Atlanta too far. 48 hours to Vanderbilt, Atlanta's too far. So they called Birmingham, and there was a doctor who had been on call for about 30 minutes. So I'm the very first call he gets. And this guy was an amazing, brilliant doctor from Africa named Dr. Okor. I'll never forget this man. He's my angel. And it's so funny because the nurses said, if you would have asked for him, you wouldn't have gotten him. That's how well sought after this guy was. But he was filling in for another doctor who had gone to a wedding or a funeral or something. And he had only been on call for 30 minutes when he got the call that I was coming in. And they drove me in an ambulance to Birmingham, which I don't recommend. That hour and a half on a gurney was painful. And by the time I got to Birmingham and this guy was there waiting for me, he did my surgery and he was absolutely, the precision of it, I was told by other doctors, was amazing. The fact that I gained my eyesight back to the best that I could at the time. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was on a cocktail of all these drugs at first when I got there to mitigate the pain, to help me with the diabetes insipidus, to help me with my whole endocrine system was jacked because the tumor was sat on my pituitary. I just had all these different challenges, and Dr. Okora managed them all. I mean, he was amazing. Wow. And what a lot of people don't understand, when you have these types of detailed situations where I needed an endocrinologist, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and a neurosurgeon, and I needed them all at the same time, which was one of the challenges of going to Vanderbilt because they weren't all ready at the same time. This guy was an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat, a neurosurgeon, board certified, and they had a whole endocrinology department at Birmingham. I mean, it was just like exactly what I needed. And so when I got there, they were able to, I mean, brilliantly handle my situation. And it was amazing. I know it was God because I wasn't even going to that hospital, but that's where I ended up. And so when I finally got out of the hospital and I was able to look in hindsight and hear the stories, because, you know, I was there, but I wasn't there, hear the stories about how it all happened. I just thank God that it happened the way that it did, because I know it spared my life, you know, to get a doctor that everybody wanted but couldn't get if they tried. And he's forced to work on me because he's the only one there, you know. All of that was just beautifully orchestrated. That was God, yeah.
So let me just go back a minute, just in case someone just started watching this. So you were diagnosed, well, first of all, you went blind for 48 hours. You they did a test and realized that you had a brain tumor.
Yes. You
had difficulty getting through to a doctor.
Yes.
Who was able to, you know, cater for all these specialties. Mm-hmm. And you got a doctor, you had the surgery. So after the surgery, tell me what happened. Because, I mean, I'm sure Jason, Thomas, your husband, must have been sitting there wondering what's going on. Tell us about that.
It's interesting because when I woke up from my surgery, I went into surgery blind. A little bit of my sight tried to come back, but when I went under, I was still technically blind. And when I woke up from surgery, I saw him in my room looking out the window. And I could look at his face and tell that he was trying to figure out, what am I going to do with these two little kids if this woman cannot see and she's not going to be able to work for a while? You know, what is life going to be? Mm. And I could see that on his face as I looked at him, and I called out to him once I woke up, and he turned and he looked at me and he said, "You see me." And it's funny because he was able to look in my eyes, he says, when I was blind, and he saw that there was no sight in my eyes. Mm. But when I called out to him, he saw me see him. So that's how he describes it. He says, "I saw you see me. I realized you could see me."
Wow.
And he just broke down. Oh. I think it was just like, woof, that we dodged a bullet, you know. Oh, gosh.
That was God. That was
God. Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. So tell us more about how you are now doing what you're doing.
Yes. Well, after I got home,
the beauty industry.
Right. So after I got home, I could not use anything on my face, my hair, my body. I used Castile soap, which is just plain. I couldn't wash my hair with anything. I got rid of those Glade plugins that you plug into the wall for scents. That bothered me.
Okay.
I scented any detergent. I used Arm & Hammer unscented. That was the only thing that worked on my clothes. I couldn't stand the smell of the detergent in the clothes. And in hindsight, what I realized was happening was my body had a heightened sensitivity to the artificial ingredients and fragrances, the synthetics in everything the chemicals that we just overload ourselves with. We don't realize all these things are just chemical compounds. And my body had a heightened sensitivity to it, and I just couldn't manage it anymore. I could not manage that heightened sensitivity. My body just completely pushed back on it. And so I realized I had to do something to survive. I ended up cutting my hair off because the surgery and the medication just took everything in the top out. I had hair around the sides, but the top was burnt out. And I wore wigs for a while, and then I just eventually just cut it off and just dealt with it. So there are pictures of me on the internet, on Facebook, where you can see that first cut where it's just low, low, low. And I just said, it is what it is. And from there, I just kind of went on a journey. You know, my background is journalism. So I started to research as though I was researching for a story, trying to figure out what on earth happened to me that caused this to happen to me. There's no way, you know, with how I was eating and how I was living, that this was just an anomaly. Not to mention when I would go to my doctor appointments and I sat in that whole endocrinology wing at UAB hospital in this huge room where they would herd us all in to take us in to get our MRIs. We were just like in a big queue and we were in a room to get an MRI done. In that room, I realized after going maybe the third or fourth time, that the women in the room, they all had the same thing. All of us had the last one. And then after kind of surveying the room, I realized that of all the women there, over 60% of us were women of color. That kind of blew me away. And I kept telling my husband, I said, it's something to this. There's no way. It's just got to be something to the fact that most of us are black. And I mean, some were white. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't all black, but it was, you could tell just looking around the room. It was like 100 of us in there. And I know 60% of us were black.
Hold on to that point. It seems like we'll have to do this program into, I don't want to miss any part of this story. So we will go on to part 2. So we're going to end it now. And then on Tuesday, we'll do part 2.
You got it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moment, just one moment. Now, you know, as I listen to this story, you have to come back and listen, guys, because this story tells me that, as I always try to do, I always try to leave a thought. And this thought goes very well with what I want to say. It's from an unknown person here. He said, don't stress yourself too much because no matter how bad the situation is, it will change. It will change. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Express. This is Carolyn, your host. See you on Tuesday. Thank you.